Hey guys, welcome back. This is Blue Forest. So, over the past few months, I have been experimenting with some new masteries, partly for fun, but also out of curiosity. And I decided that I would max out both Willpower and Bleed Resistance to test them out. Willpower, if you don't know, allows you to recover some health based upon the amount of damage you do when you're debuffed from bleed, burn, shock, or acid. It works in a very similar way to MV1's Willpower, except it's not as strong. And then Bleed Resistance, of course, mitigates bleed damage against bleed bots and mods. And so I did max them out, and I decided to run an experiment where I would do the same fight twice against LOC3 BC, the first time without Willpower and Bleed Resistance, and then the second time with them both maxed out. I did not want to use a brawler because they generally have a very low crit rate, and of course the danger with BC more than anything is that he's going to land bleeds on you with those melee crits. I also did not want to use Tronus because he can mitigate bleeds with his SIG, and he takes a lot less damage when the Relic of Preservation is active. So I wanted to use a bot that I do use frequently, so I decided to use Soundwave because he has a pretty normal crit rate. It's not the highest, but it's not really low like brawlers. And BC would be a good opponent for Soundwave because most of BC's attacks are melees, they're not ranged, and so I knew that I would not be able to rely on Soundwave's shield very much. And so what I did was I decided to play fairly normally but cautiously. I used relics but no boosts, so no health boosts or anything like that. And I avoided full combos. I just did partial combos. I landed heavies, special threes, ranged when I could. But I didn't want to just stand in the corner and fire off range shots because I did actually want to test out these masteries. And I will say that overall, I was quite surprised and fairly impressed with the results. So take a look at the fights and we will come back and talk about it. All right, guys, so as you could see, there was a pretty clear disparity between the first fight and the second fight. Soundwave lasted significantly longer in the second fight. Now, the goal here was not to finish it. I expected to die, but Soundwave lasted a lot longer than I thought he would the second time around. So there was a clear benefit there. In the first fight, I only got BC down to 89%. I was dead after 50 hits. In the second fight, it was over 180 hits, and I got him down to 45%. I also didn't get hit in the second fight until the very end, so most of the damage I took was bleed damage. And so the interesting thing is that, in the first fight, I landed a couple bleeds on myself, and I was almost dead. In the second fight, I did get a little bit luckier in terms of RNG because I didn't have bleeds landed on me until a little bit later, but I still had a lot of stacks of bleed landed on me in that second fight. And even though I obviously took damage, it was noticeably less damage, and willpower did help. I took a look at the bleed damage, and in the first fight, without the Masteries, BC was landing 450 to 500 bleed damage per tick. In the second fight, it was 300 to 350, so it was about 30 to 35% less, which is exactly what bleed resistance should do, so it does work properly. And then with willpower, when I was able to land big hits, specials, heavies, it did mitigate the damage. The thing about Willpower, which is disappointing, is that it maxes out at 9% of the damage dealt, which is way less than a maxed out MV1 will do. It's even far less than Nemesis will do, and he has a similar mechanism where he will heal based upon the amount of damage he does with specials. Even a low sig Nemesis is, 16 to 18%. I wish Willpower had a higher threshold. I wish you were able to recover more, because the only way you're going to have a lot of healing is if you land really big hits. And remember, you're only able to heal when you're debuffed. And a lot of the time, bleed, shock bots, whatever, it's only brief windows. You might have 4 seconds, 5 seconds, and sometimes you can't get a big hit in or a combo in. But if you think about Willpower as a resistance more than a healing mastery, it does provide some benefits. Soundwave bled to death much more slowly in that second fight. Now, if you were actually using these two masteries together long term, using them against BC, particularly LOC3 or high level AM BC, wouldn't make sense either. But against general bleed bots, where you don't have to worry about having bleeds landed on you with those melee crits, it will provide some protection, right? So I would say they're pretty decent overall. They absolutely help. Are they amazing? No. Will I personally use them long term? No, I won't. But if you struggle against bleed bots, remember there are more bleed bots than any other DOT bots in the game. I would actually recommend Willpower with bleed resistance if you're going to go that route. There's plenty of bleed bots. There are bleed mods. It can be helpful. The only other downside is that you do have to use almost half of your mastery points for them, and that's kind of a frustrating thing. It just leaves fewer points for offense. But as an experiment, interesting. The fact that I was able to get BC down to 45% the second time, and it was, 89% the first time? I mean, that's a pretty dramatic difference. So I'm glad I did it. I thought it was interesting. And I also just wanted to mention MUFC 14 a few months ago did a similar kind of video where he was testing Willpower and Double Edge, the offensive mastery, with a bunch of brawlers against LOC3 BC. That's really worth watching as well. Really interesting video. I mean, he was using bots like Grim, MV1, and Primal, who already have purification or healing. But he did also show the fight with Motormaster and Ironhide, so the non-purifiers, or at least, Ironhide purifies, but he wasn't even trying to purify. And that was really, really cool. I mean, Motormaster was able to survive. Ironhide barely survived. He did not show the videos of Tantrum or Grinder. I wish he had, because apparently they died. I would have liked to see how long they were able to last. So even though in that video, MUFC 14 was doing Willpower and Double Edge, and I was doing Willpower and Bleed Resistance, that's another video worth taking a look at if you're thinking about Willpower, if you're thinking about some of those defensive masteries in general. So I will leave it there for now, guys. Do let me know if you have any questions, and we will speak again soon.